It was a crisp autumn evening in the small town of Elmwood, where the air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the streets hummed with quiet energy. At the heart of this town stood the Golden Oak, an upscale restaurant known for its fine dining and impeccable service. Inside, under the warm glow of golden chandeliers, sat Reginald Montclair, a man whose wealth seemed as vast as his arrogance. Reginald was no stranger to luxury. His tailored suit fit him like armor, and his voice carried a tone that demanded attention without asking for it. He had come here tonight not just to dine, but to flaunt his success, surrounded by others who could only dream of such opulence. As he scanned the room, his gaze landed on the waiter approaching their table, a young man named Oliver. Oliver wasn't much to look at, dressed simply in a black vest and tie, but there was something about him that caught Reginald's eye, a calmness in his movements, a steadiness in his steps. Still, Reginald couldn't help himself. Wealth often bred contempt, and tonight he felt compelled to test the patience of those beneath him. "Good evening," Oliver said softly, placing menus on the table. His voice was smooth, almost soothing, yet Reginald dismissed it immediately. "Evening," Reginald replied curtly, already flipping through the menu with disinterest. "I assume you know what I'm ordering?" Oliver tilted his head slightly, confusion flickering across his face before smoothing out into neutrality. "Sir, we don't have a set menu for every guest. You'll need to choose from our offerings." Reginald scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "You mean I actually have to decide? How quaint." He glanced up at Oliver, narrowing his eyes. "Tell me, do you even understand how fortunate you are to serve someone like me? A man who could buy this entire establishment if he so desired." Oliver hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I understand completely." But Reginald wasn't satisfied. He wanted more than compliance. He wanted fear, respect, something tangible to confirm his superiority. So he pressed further. "And yet you stand there looking so content. Don't you ever wish for more? For power, influence, freedom?" For a moment, Oliver didn't answer. Then quietly he spoke. "Freedom isn't always tied to wealth, Mr. Montclair. Sometimes it's found in knowing when to let go." The words hung heavy in the air, striking Reginald like a physical blow. No one dared speak to him this way. Not servants, not employees, certainly not waiters. Yet here was Oliver, unshaken, unaffected by Reginald's attempts to belittle him. It infuriated Reginald, but also intrigued him. "Let go?" Reginald repeated, mocking the idea. "Of what exactly? Ambition? Drive? Success?" "Of control," Oliver said firmly now, meeting Reginald's glare head-on. "Of trying to force life into shapes it doesn't want to take." Reginald laughed harshly, waving a hand dismissively. "You're wasting your breath, boy. People like me don't let go of anything. We take, we hold, we dominate." As the conversation continued, the tension between them grew thicker, drawing stares from nearby diners. Eventually, Reginald ordered his meal, dismissing Oliver with a sharp nod. The waiter retreated gracefully, leaving Reginald stewing in his own frustration. When the food arrived, it was nothing short of perfection, each dish prepared with care and precision. Yet Reginald barely tasted it. His mind kept circling back to Oliver's words, gnawing at him like a splinter under the skin. Who was this man? And why did he seem so unfazed by Reginald's wealth? Determined to uncover the truth, Reginald decided to settle the bill early and leave a generous tip, hoping to glean some information from the staff. Rising from his seat, he approached the counter where another waiter stood waiting. "I'd like to pay my tab," Reginald announced, sliding his credit card onto the wooden surface. The waiter nodded politely, processing the transaction swiftly. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" "Yes," Reginald muttered impatiently. "Listen, I have a question. That waiter, Oliver, does he work here permanently?" The waiter paused, glancing over his shoulder toward the kitchen door. "Oh, Oliver? No, sir. He doesn't work here regularly. He's filling in for someone else tonight." Reginald frowned. "Then why is he wearing a uniform? Why does he act as though he belongs here?" The waiter smiled faintly, leaning closer. "Because, sir, Oliver owns the restaurant." Time froze. Reginald blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What did you say?" "I said Oliver owns the restaurant," the waiter repeated gently. "He's been running it for years. Tonight, he decided to step out of the office and onto the floor, to remind himself what it feels like to serve others. A cold sweat broke out along Reginald's spine. All this time, he'd mocked and questioned the very person who held the keys to this place. The realization hit him like a freight train, shattering his confidence and leaving him humbled in ways he never imagined possible. Stumbling backward, Reginald nearly collided with a passing patron. Without another word, he grabbed his coat and fled the restaurant, the weight of his arrogance finally catching up with him. Later that night, lying awake in his grand mansion, Reginald couldn't shake the memory of Oliver's steady gaze or the wisdom in his words. For the first time in years, he wondered if perhaps he'd been wrong all along. Maybe success wasn't measured by possessions or power, but by the ability to connect with people, with oneself, with life itself. In the days that followed, Reginald made a decision. He returned to the Golden Oak, not as a customer, but as a learner. Seeking out Oliver, he apologized sincerely for his behavior and asked to shadow him for a week. To his surprise, Oliver agreed, teaching Reginald lessons far greater than any business school could offer. Through hard work and humility, Reginald began to see the world differently, not as something to conquer, but as something to cherish. And though the road ahead would be long, he knew one thing for certain. True wealth lay not in gold or status, but in understanding the value of kindness, empathy, and grace. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from winning battles, but from recognizing when to surrender. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.